550 KTSA News Time is 10:08. Let's start the weekend right now. Gang of Four is in the house. We're going to kick around the big stories of the day and the week with the gang. And you can hang with the gang and vote in the JR poll at 210-599-5555 from the online newspaper, Plaza de Armas TX.com. Elaine Wolff. Elaine, welcome back. Good morning.
Thanks for having me on.
How
I'm
are
very glad
you?
to be here. Excellent.
Is everything in the online news world?
Everything is very good. Everything is great. We're doing something real world next week. We're doing a forum on the Eagle Ford Shale. So on the economic opportunities as well as some of the challenges. So
Well, we get so many calls. We get so many calls from
people.
people that are working that and talking about what a boom it is. And it almost sounds like it's happening on another planet.
Right.
Because you never hear anywhere in our economy of a situation where, we're dying for people to come here and take these jobs, and we've got as many jobs as people can fill, and they can't build apartment complexes fast enough. And where else is that happening?
Yeah, exactly. And that's partly what the forum's about. And also, like, what is San Antonio doing to take advantage of that, and what opportunities are we missing,
Right.
and what's really going on with some of these environmental questions, as well as sort of the long term, like really how long can this boom last?
Plaza de Armas TX.com is the website. All right. Carlos Abelar is a listener to our show who frequently calls in and faithfully defends when he needs defending, Ron Paul. But you're also a Republican,
Yes.
and you are also getting married.
Yes, I am getting married. Kind of excited. It's coming up, and hopefully everything runs smoothly.
Now, what is a libertarian wedding like? Are there no vows?
All kinds of
or-
music,
Oh,
all
okay.
kinds of drinking, and all kinds of fun.
Nice. All right. Robert Fleming, Magnolia Pancake House. He's also going to be the proud father of a second one.
Absolutely.
We hope in the month of April. Right?
We're-
Tell
we're-
everybody where that will be.
Yeah, that's at 10333 Huebner Road, which is just a couple blocks west of the intersection of Huebner and Fredericksburg. We bought 3 beautiful acres with a lot of big oak trees, and we're building a restaurant, second location. We hope to be open at the end of April.
You had the Diners, Drive-In, and Dives experience recently.
betcha.
Has that leveled off in terms of the business it brought you, or are you still seeing new?
We're still seeing it. We still get a lot of every time it re-airs, we see our traffic on the website go up. I get lots of people asking for the recipe for the Pfannkuchen, which you can find on our Facebook page. It's bumped our business about 20-25%, and it's kind of stayed there.
Let's start with, what else? Let's talk contraception. Who would have thought, right? Doesn't it seem weird that back during that debate in January when George Stephanopoulos kept asking about it, we all wondered, why is he asking so much about contraception? Who knew that weeks later that would be the biggest news story in the country? I mean, you didn't see that one coming.
Well, the person that knew was Stephanopoulos, because
He's on the
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
he might have a little insider information to try to see if he could catch Romney, because he was the one he was pressing Romney to
Right.
get him to say something wrong.
Right. And so he was like the canary in the coal mine. Coal mine. All right, so let's talk about this. I think, Elaine, this thing is going to be with us for quite some time. Do you agree? I mean,
Yes.
this is far from over.
Yeah, no, it's an important question. I mean, it is one small part of a larger question, right? Which is, how do government and religion interact when we were talking about things like healthcare, when we're talking about things that we agree that are important to society, that government is involved in some role. So,
Is this, Robert, a religious liberty issue, a liberty issue? Is it a right? How do you see it?
I think it's a constitutional issue. I don't really believe that the government, the Establishment Clause is very clear, and it's been expanded so much, but it's just that the government shall make no law regarding the establishment of a national religion. Everything else is somebody else's opinion on how it might fit into that. I think for the government to tell the Catholic Church that you have to give something that is absolutely against your theology as part of a health insurance plan, and then to come and say, okay, well, you don't have to give it, but the insurance company does. They factor the cost in anyways. It's a de facto kind of backdoor way of making them do it. And I think that Elaine's right. It's a big issue, but I think it's a big issue because it's being made into an issue as a diversion from the bigger picture, which is, where is our country going? What do we want our country to be? How does personal responsibility and personal freedom fit into all of this? And if we keep them distracted about things like that, we're picking fights where we don't need to pick a fight. Insurance, that whole requirement about contraceptives as opposed to abortofacients being required in insurance policies. A number of states have that, and they have it where if you want that coverage, it's a standalone, you buy it on your own. And for the government to say, no, you have to include that, I think is a big leap into personal liberty.
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple of issues here that you're maybe not touching on. I mean, first of all, contraceptives are great public policy when you are thinking about both the status of women and children, the status of families, and their economic and educational attainment, and it makes sense economically. Like if you just look
if
at
they
the
were
women's
such a
health
good
program,
issue and it was something that was so beneficial to society, how come our out-of-wedlock birth rate is so high in this
if
country?
you look at the women's health program in Texas, which has only been implemented in a very limited fashion, it has been phenomenally successful. If they look at the data, it's prevented a ton of unwanted pregnancies. It makes sure that women can get contraceptives at a cost they can afford. It can be free sometimes, depending upon what their economic level is. And it comes with other preventative care, which is very important, so that when they do choose to go ahead and have children, at that point that they are more likely to be a healthier parent and therefore have healthier children. But that program is consistently undermined by politics. So it's not that it's not successful, it's just that it's not very well implemented or made available to women. So when you see our birth rate, we're not talking about young women who are 16 going, gosh, I could get my hands on contraception, but I'm just not going to do it. They don't even know it's available, or they cannot get to it.
I disagree. They make it so available, and they make it so known in the school programs. I'm the father of a 23-year-old daughter. She knew what birth control was, not by our hand, at 12 years old.
But would she know where she could go to get a confidential exam and be able to get the pill
I
regularly,
think that if she
inexpensively
wanted
so?
it,
And would she feel that she could do it and would do it?
I
And I
think
guess that's
that
the other
she-
question too. Would your daughter do that?
No, because she knows, she knows and has values to know that, you know what, she has the ultimate contraceptive. No, I'm not doing that.
And I think that if that's what she believes and chooses not to do that, that is great. But it is okay if that is not your religious belief to not
No.
choose to do
This
that,
doesn't
right?
have
That's the other
anything
side
to
of
do
it.
with religion.
That's
This
what you're
has to
making
do.
it.
This
Yeah.
doesn't have a darn thing to do with religion.
Well, I think what you're
This
saying
has
is that the answer is if she's
everything
not
to
married,
do-
that she needs to not have sex. And
No,
I'm saying, it's okay if you believe that, but that is
no.
not true for
If
everybody
she
else.
don't want to get
Consenting
pregnant,
women can choose to have sex just as consenting men can choose to have sex.
I
and they
understand
should be
that.
able to get contraceptives if they want to get contraceptives. So then the
but
question becomes,
would you agree,
what is
Elaine,
the proper way to
would
treat
you
it as a public
hold on a
policy
second.
issue?
Hold on a second. Would you agree that the casualization and the trivialization of out-of-wedlock sex has had significant impact on our culture and on the lives of young people when they get sexually active younger and they trivialize sex? It leads to a lot of self-esteem issues. It leads to a lot of relationship and integration issues that what was something that was once kind of a very private act between a man and a woman is now something that is really not much more than casual entertainment.
I'll say this real quick, and then I think we can, I don't know if this is the direction that you want to go in with this, but I think you are conflating a couple of issues. Having contraception available and affordable is not the same thing as saying to people, hey, you should have sex whenever, with whomever, however.
How is that not
You don't have
some
to have
way
those
tacitly
things.
saying, okay, you don't have to worry about getting pregnant, so now it's okay to have sex?
So basically,
How is that a conflation? I mean,
Do you
is the end. You can say, well, that's not the intended consequence. Okay, but it certainly is a foreseeable outcome.
that's a terrible analogy, right? Because, for instance, the fact that there's a bar open right now at 10 a.m. and there are many, many open in this town tacitly says that I can go get drunk and drive myself home and whatever, right? So are we going to just shut down everything that possibly invites behavior we don't necessarily want to see in others? I mean, you are really complaining. You can teach your children, your church can teach your children what you want them to believe. I can teach my children what I want them to believe. But that doesn't mean that contraception should not be available
I
to
didn't say
those
it
who
should
want
not
to.
be available. I said that the government should not mandate that an institution like the Catholic Church, which has a theological belief against it, should be required to provide it as part of their health insurance
Okay,
plan.
so we agree on that. You seem to be going further with that. I do think, however, it needs to be available.
Because I
And so
think
then
it's
the
a
government
much bigger
says,
conversation. than
okay, if you, the church, don't have to pay for it, how do we pay for it to make sure that it is available for those people? I'm not sure that making the insurer provide it is the right step. You know, perhaps it's something that the government pays for. It does pay for itself, and the Women's Health Program has demonstrated that. So I don't have a problem as a taxpayer saying, let's make sure that affordable contraception is available to women who choose, and men who choose to access it and use it.
I have a problem as a taxpayer saying,
Hey,
I'm going to
Carlos.
use my tax money to do
How
that.
are you enjoying this mild winter we're having?
I'm enjoying it, but I have a different perspective.
Let's hear from you.
Well, To me, it was Obama strategically was just playing to get the women vote, because women every month have to pay some money to get their contraception, and therefore if they hear it's free now or something, well, that plays to the women vote. To get contraception cheaper, though, I wouldn't advocate that the government would deliver it cheaper. I would say that they're going to add that contraception now is going to be more expensive because the government now is making it free. And also, I would say that we also don't want it to become a social issue where it's like, I'm understanding what you're saying and what you're saying, but it should be just the liberty issue. Like they use a religion to bring it in through the back door, because it wasn't really about the religion, because now everybody has to offer it freely or to their employees or whatever, you know. So I think that the Obama strategy or the Obama team and machine is nothing to play with. I mean, they're bringing their A game.
I see what you're saying. I get the feeling that the president's team is going down a list of voter groups that they need to lock in. That may be one of them. Elaine, I hear what you're saying, but I think you're being a little delicate about the fact that this isn't just making it available. This is enshrining it as a right. And I want to know from where
we're
that
not
is.
enshrining it
Where
as
is
a right.
that
We're
coming
enshrining it
from?
as a smart public policy issue. For instance, just
No,
it is
we're
not. It
saying,
is not. It is not.
We're saying that it is intolerable for the religious exemption to continue. Because even last Friday, when he sort of climbed
No, what
down
we're
and said,
saying
we'll
is-
make the insurance company pay for it instead of the Catholic institution, it's still going to be the Catholic institution paying those higher premiums.
No, you're thinking of it differently. Now, I guess I missed the part where they said, "Okay, women, you have to get contraception."
No.
right? So
No,
what's
I
happening
didn't say
here
women
is
had to
it's just
get
like-
it, but it's a right that has to be available. I don't have to exercise free speech, but that right has to be available.
Jack, it has to be available just like a cancer screening has to be available, just like high blood pressure screening, like
Where's the
hypertension
right to
screening
any of
has to
those?
be
Yeah,
available.
where's the right to that?
Once we say we're going to offer a public, let's say, I mean, basically we are talking about a type of public health program. So if you're going to have a public health program, you say, what are smart public health policies to have in place? And contraception is a smart public health policy. There are reams of data to support that women are healthier, families are healthier, children are healthier if families plan when to have children.
Okay,
Women
that
need to be
is-
able to
but
have
you're
those health
making
choices.
the-
And so we're
Now
not saying
you're
and so
conflating.
we're saying it has to be available.
I understand the logic.
And so if it can't, and so it's fine. I think
But
it's
you're
a good
not
compromise.
saying
Yeah.
what they're saying,
I-
Elaine. You're practicing or you're
Yeah.
preaching a traditional liberal democratic, this is good public health policy.
And it should be available. And if it's not going to, if we're not going to make the
Okay.
church pay for it, which I agree with, don't make the church pay for it, because I think that crosses some problematic
Okay.
lines, right, between church and state. But then it should be available some other way. And I'm saying, I'm not sure making insurers pay for it, because that's making a smaller group pay for something to protect someone else's right. The church's right not to pay for that, which we're talking.
I just
which
think
agree
that the
with.
administration
So I'm
is-
saying maybe we need to make it available some other way.
Well, I think they've
Yeah.
gone from urging it or promoting it, which is the traditional position of liberals, to saying it is a right and no one may, not even for religious liberty reasons, interfere with the delivery of that service.
And I'll tell you why you don't want it to be that this group just can't get that service, because, I mean, so I assume that there are religions out there that do not believe in transplants, right? We know there are religions out there that don't believe in immunizations. We know that there are religions out there that don't believe in other things that we take now as a matter of good public health policy and as something that people should have an access to as American citizens. So if you say, okay, fine on these hot button issues, then suddenly how do you address all these other areas in which people are like, yeah, my religion is not comfortable with that, so we're not going to do it. I mean, you have to have some other way that it is still available.
Why do I have
people.
to address that at all? Why
Because
can't
you've-
a
once you've
religious
made that-
employer? Why can't a religious employer practice their beliefs in the workplace?
I think if they are not taking federal money, there's not an issue with them doing that. But I'm saying if it is a public health issue, if we made it a public policy issue, then we have to say, how do we then do it as a society so it is in fact available? That's what I'm saying, and I think that's a pretty clear and pragmatic
But
approach to it.
the words public health issue, to me, sound like mandate.
Really? But I guess I'm still missing the part where we say you have to take
No,
contraception.
not have to take
Jack,
it,
we
have to
You have
offer
to provide it.
Have to offer
I guess
so
you're
that
trying-
people can take advantage of it if they want to, if it makes good
No,
public health sense.
you're
It's not-
arguing
yeah.
against a straw man. No one is arguing that women have to take it.
Right.
We're
And
arguing about whether
but your
employers
argument
have to
only makes
offer it.
sense that it's a mandate is.
It's a mandate to the employers.
And I don't
It's
think that-
available- So as is
To the
any other
person
part
paying the
of the
premium.
healthcare issue, I'm saying it is good public policy.
I don't
It makes
believe that.
sense if
I don't
you're
believe that
gonna
any
offer
health
it.
care coverage should be mandated.
The other issue is that it's
I
not
don't
that
either. I think that it should be
contraception is not
single
available.
carrier plan.
It's available all over the place. It's a question of who pays for it. If you wish to use contraception and that is your right, then pay for it. But the rest of us should not have to pay for it, nor
Well,
should
Elaine,
an
are you
insurance
saying
company
that-
be
No,
required
you
to.
saying that it's
instead
so-
you can pay for all of the unplanned pregnancies and the children that result from that and the poor health.
But
We're
that's because
already
we-
paying for
That's
it.
my
If it
point.
was
So
such
do
a good
something
deal, it would
smarter.
work.
Do something smarter.
So you're saying we have to socialize healthcare costs. We would be better off socializing them on the front end with contraception than socializing them on the back end with pregnancies and STDs. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so I'm gonna go, you can use.
Do you agree with that,
socialized-
Carlos?
I
We're going to
guess-
have to pay all this anyway,
Do you consider
so we
social-
should be
do you-
smart about
Can I
it.
just ask you? So you consider Social Security socialization? I imagine, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, right. So then in that case, if that's your position, I guess we can use the term for this. I personally would like to see a single payer system that is like Social Security, that is focused on preventative care and on catastrophic care. And then, just like people do with their retirement plans, on top of that, you could go purchase other plans and do other things. That would not be the only thing available, but it would be a real, true safety net and a competitor in the market that would also help normalize some of the other insurance rates. And I think that would make a lot of sense.
Now, Elaine is-
Now, once you do that, yes, you have to say, okay, you have to mesh the Constitution with that and start addressing things like what are people entitled to and how do we handle that. But within that, you can address a lot of things very smartly, and like the Social Security program, have what is a very popular and over the long haul has been a successful program.
All right, you're willing to admit
Yeah.
that you would like to see single payer. Carlos,
Yes.
I think the administration would really have preferred to see single payer. The people that crafted Obamacare really wanted single payer. So are they just not willing to go as far as she did? I mean, they want the same thing, but they're not willing to call it that?
Well, I mean, I thought they tried to go that far, but there was some resistance. But I guess my issue is that no one talks about the freedom of just find. If contraception is such a big issue to the woman that is working at that location, she has the freedom to go work somewhere else if they're not offering it to her, and if they do, and if they don't offer it, or if they do offer it, the employer has to add that to the cost of of hiring that person. Do their premiums go up now because they're offering free contraception?
Well, sure.
And so then, what's going to happen is that the government is now involved. What's going to happen is that there's going to be women are going to have a little bit harder time finding jobs. There's going to still be more. There's going to probably be more STDs and more pregnancies because people, even if it's available, the people that are responsible are going to act responsible. The people that aren't are going to now be more responsible. So whatever the government does with good intentions, the opposite always happens.
I'm not sure I follow that. I mean, again, with the Women's Health Program, which provides exams along with contraception, and they now are specifically offering a STD component with that. STDs don't go up as a result of that. It actually encourages people to behave more responsibly because they have more information about their bodies and they have access to care.
Let me hold you guys here. We'll come back to this on the other side. Gang of Four continues, but first, into the 550 KTSA newsroom. Here's Karen Klaus.
Public Education Committee is
Except Nancy wants to pick the women who are on the panel.
I like when she said "duh."
Yeah.
All right, on our
Say that
gang
every
of four.
time she speaks.
That was former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, maybe former and future House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. On our gang of four today, we do have a woman on our panel. Doggone it! And what a woman she is, Elaine Wolff from Plaza de Armas TX.com.
Delighted to be representing my gender.
She's doing the work of three women over there. Plus Carlos Abelar, who's going to marry a woman in April, so that counts. And Robert Fleming likes women.
Employ a lot of them.
Employs them.
Married to one.
We'll
Got
feed some of
daughter.
them when they come to his restaurant.
You bet.
We're going to be there today with our winners at the Riccardi party,
I know.
by the way. You should know that, yeah.
Really?
All right.
Duh.
So contraception in the news because of the argument and the edict from the Obama administration, and also because the new Republican frontrunner, Rick Santorum, has contraception on the brain. Man, Elaine, you want a man that thinks about contraception.
You want a man who thinks about sex all the time between anybody and everybody.
Here's what he
concern for
told.
him.
Here's what he told an evangelical blogger, caffeinatedthoughts.com, last October. One of the things I will talk about that no president has talked about before is the dangers of contraception in this country, the whole sexual libertine idea. It's a license to do things within marriage that are counter to how things are supposed to be. Sex in marriage is for purposes that, yes, are conjugal, but also procreative. These are important public policy ideas. So now, aren't we talking about, I argued this with the listeners yesterday, is he saying that the government has an interest in making sure that there is not non-procreative sex in marriage, Robert Fleming?
It would sure sound like that. I thought he says he's a Catholic. Sounds more like he's a Puritan.
Well, I'm trying to be reasonable about this because I know a lot of people have fallen for Rick, but I don't really know how else to understand that.
I have to go back and say something, okay? The guy's got 7 kids. He's a Catholic, okay? And he's all hyped up about it should only be for procreation. I come from a family of 7 kids, an Irish Catholic family of 7 kids, okay? Everybody in my town was like Catholic families, Protestant families, Lutheran families, 7, 8, 9 kids, okay? If it was just for procreation, after about 20-some years, I asked my mother, God rest her soul, who bore 7 children and had 1 miscarriage, I said, Mom, how did you end up with 7 kids? And she said, well, your father was a good dancer and I liked scotch. Now, I gotta tell you, these were 2 of the staunchest Catholics I've ever met in my life. Okay?
That sounds like a good
I
match.
don't think they'd be voting for Mr. Santorum.
All right, so how else are we to understand this? Where am I reading this wrong?
No, you're not reading it wrong. I mean, there are a number of things he said that should give people great pause. This is somebody who, on the one hand, is saying that he's a very conservative Republican, that he wants limited government, but on the other hand, very much has a personal gospel that is about government intrusion into the most private decisions that people make in their lives. And that should give everybody across the board, whoever they might be, pause. And, and frankly, in a way that he's obsessively strange about it, I think. I'm sure he'd get him on the psychologist couch. I'm sure it'd be fascinating for hours.
Isn't there a difference, Carlos, between a senator holding these viewpoints, where at best he's 1/100th of a decision, versus a president? It seems to me that if you make him president, it would be hard for me to imagine that he would not want to do something about these beliefs. Couldn't really do much about it as a senator.
Yeah, I think that maybe he's trying to play to the religious vote, and that maybe people might want to see him as president because he can use the bully pulpit as something to speak about these issues, but not necessarily try to legislate. Although I think that he would try to pass programs or something to try to legislate or convince people of his views. He sounds like he's like a personal crusader for this issue, but that gets votes in the Republican Party, so therefore he's playing.
So the sympathetic interpretation of this is he would just be he would encourage behaviors that he sees as correct, but he would know, Robert, not to go so far and not to get so far off track as to actually legislate that.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's kind of on the contraception thing. He said that he doesn't believe in it, but he wouldn't legislate against it. So he says that. But I go back to what I said at the top of the hour. I really think this entire discussion, especially in the primaries like this, is a diversion. And it's being played up because it is a diversion.
Who's playing it up?
I think the Republican candidates themselves are playing it up. I think that the attention they're getting from the media plays it up. I think the unintended but complicit contribution from the Obama administration plays it up. All of these things came together in this harmonic convergence at this time when it's really not the most... Is it really the most pressing issue that we have to discuss as a nation? I don't think so.
So by playing it up, when the Republican candidates play up these issues, what are they avoiding specifically talking about, in your opinion?
I think at this stage of the game, in this primary, they've been beating on each other so much as opposed to talking about their vision for the future of the country and their vision of how we right our ship, as it were, that it seems to bring them attention. And that if we go back and let's talk about should our dollar be strong? Should we be exploring for energy on our own? How should we handle long-term unemployment? All these things, people are going, oh my God, that's a bore. Got heard all that, done all that. I don't care. How does it affect me? But you get to things like contraception, which have really strong moral ties in people's hearts and minds. That's something they get all
Carlos,
jacked up
are they
about.
falling into this because the perception, not the reality, but the perception is that the economy is improving?
Well, I don't
Because
know.
it looked like this would be all about the economy for a while, and now it appears that we've introduced some new pages into the script.
Well, I think that could easily be contradicted about the economy by not using the numbers the government uses,
sure.
and just
Let's
so
say
I don't
that
think
the
it's that.
perception is that it's getting better. You and I don't think it is, but the perception is it is. Is that why they've decided, oh, we've got to shift to the social conservative message because we're not sure by November that we'll be able to win on the fiscal conservative message?
I think it's a mixture of Santorum rising in the polls and then him manifesting what he said once in the 90s when I read that he described himself as a progressive conservative. Well, maybe this is a manifestation of what a progressive conservative is. Someone that wants to progress conservative issues while growing government, the same way that a progressive liberal wants to progress their issues by growing government, but the issue is that the government always grows, and if we're trying to advocate smaller government, well then Rick Santorum shouldn't be your guy if you're trying to advocate smaller government.
Well, now he also did an interview, Elaine, in Nevada, which is coming up in the calendar, and he said, "I'm someone who takes the opinion that gambling is not something that's beneficial." And then he said, "Freedom's not absolute. What rights in the Constitution are absolute?" I mean, this doesn't even sound like a Republican, much less a conservative Republican. It's just very puzzling to me. Is he just the last man standing, or what's going on?
Yeah, and I
here?
speak from personal experience on this. I think it's sort of like if you went to school in a small high school, as I did, and you've got to take somebody to prom, right? And you want to date somebody and go to the football games with, and you sort of just you just keep running through the class. It's like, well, all right, well maybe that one. And I think that's kind of what they're doing. They're running through the class right now, and that's why you're hearing things like Sarah Palin, sort of hinting that maybe at some point she might run if she's needed. I mean, they're clearly not satisfied with the folks that they have to choose from. So it's kind of like they tried out Newt for a while. They kind of had their little Newt flirtation. Now we're having a little Rick flirtation, but
This
I
is
don't
more
think
than a
it's
little
gonna last.
flirtation, though, Robert. I
But that's what we said about Newt.
Yeah, but Santorum, correct me if I'm wrong, we're much later into the game now, and Santorum's actually winning things and showing strength in the polls.
Let's back up a second.
That Gingrich never did.
I understand that, but let's back up a second. Is Santorum really quote unquote winning things? He went 3 for 3 things. Well, certainly Missouri doesn't really count because he got nothing out of it except a W, but he didn't get any delegates. Minnesota to win in Minnesota, having lived there for 8 years. I mean, that doesn't hold a whole lot of sway. Colorado, I was really kind of surprised that Romney did not win Colorado, seeing as how well he did there the last time around. So I don't know is he winning per se, but I do think he's risen to the top.
Leading by 22 points in Ohio, leading
Yes,
Michigan by 12 points,
I
within
know.
striking distance in Arizona.
I know, but you know what? I'm not a big fan of polls because it's all in who you ask and how you ask the questions. I think that I just don't buy it. I think that maybe the powers that be in the liberal media are hyping the guy and his wins to.
Well, it's interesting you said that, because Chris Matthews said that. He said on Hardball that he thinks the media are rooting for Santorum because he makes it a more interesting story. Elaine, you're a journalist. Is it ever the case that, I know you would never do this, but is it ever a case that the PAC sort of looks for an ongoing election story, which you've got to spend months and months and months on? Do you ever wish it could be a little spicier or a little sexier than it is? And,
Of course,
and maybe in so
consciously and
doing, you
unconsciously, we all
fan the
want-
flames a little?
Consciously or unconsciously, we all want competitive elections. And by the way, we should, as citizens, all want competitive elections, right? You should have a field to choose from all the time, and hopefully some folks that you actually feel good about. But I do think with Santorum, I think that there's something legitimate there. I mean, there really is a real interest in this guy among some people. I think it's timing to a large degree when he got noticed. Just as people were getting tired of some of the other players or realizing what their faults were, he almost could have been anybody. It's almost to the point at which he crested.
Exactly. I mean, we thoroughly know about Newt now, and found out about Herman Cain, and we found out about Bachman, and we found out about Paul, and so Santorum was the guy who was always kind of in the background, and so now it's his time for the proctology exam, and we'll find out as we now
real
are
quick, let me
all
go
about
around
him.
real quick, 'cause I
He
gotta
also
take this
doesn't really
break.
believe in proctology.
Probably not.
Will this be over as quickly as those other flirtations, or is this one going to last longer, Robert?
I think it'll flame out pretty quick.
Quickly,
It'll last longer because of Iran.
and Elaine.
I think it'll flame out pretty quickly.
All right, we're back with Gang of Four. It's 10:46. Karen's in the 550 KTSA newsroom. ArmasTX.com, Elaine Wolff, the owner of the Magnolia Pancake House, Robert Fleming, and Ron Paul supporter and loyal Republican and soon-to-be married Carlos Abelar. So the CBO reported this week that we are in the longest period of high unemployment since the Great Depression, and that unemployment will not come down under the much vaunted 8% mark before the end of 2014. We also know that real unemployment may be as high as 15 or 16%. $5 a gallon gasoline, possibly. That's what a former Shell CEO executive predicts for sometime later this year. Under traditional political circumstances, this would be the perfect storm for the defeat of an incumbent president. However, President Obama's approval ratings are up, and he looks, at the very least, very competitive going into November 2012. So, can President Obama win, Elaine, with 8+% unemployment and $5 a gallon gasoline?
I think if the perception is that the economy is improving slowly, that yes, there's chances that people will not want to switch midstream if things seem to be.
Those are not those things do not constitute a death sentence. Then.
They do not constitute death sentence.
Carlos, would you say that they do?
Probably not, because I'm not too afraid of what the president will do, but I'm more afraid of the people that vote for him will do. And if they think that when it goes to the general election, it becomes a left-right issue, and then they just join their team and they just vote that way. But I know the Obama machine will always use sound bites of whoever becomes a Republican nominee, but he will also have his sound bites. I mean, he said that he was going to cut the deficit in half by the end of his first term. So in any normal circumstances, when you hire someone to do something and he doesn't do it, well, you fire him. You don't hire him again. So I don't know. I mean, it's 50-50, I guess you could say.
Robert, why isn't this a perfect storm of one-term presidency? Why isn't it?
I think the biggest reason is because the Republicans have not put out a very cohesive message on what it is their plan is to correct these.
So we don't believe
problems.
that they would be able to do anything about
they
it.
haven't.
They just appear angry about it.
I don't. Yeah, they're just all angry, and it's all bash the president, and I bash him all the time. But without a message, people are going to be like, well, okay, better the devil we know than the devil we don't. We don't know anything about what these guys say they're going to do. They say they'll do this, they'll say they'll do that, but they haven't put out a plan yet to do it. So I guess we'll just go with the guy that we know. Hopefully he won't go off the deep end.
And you're a businessman. What does $5 a gallon gasoline mean?
I mean, you talk about the tipping point. Okay, I can go right back to 2007, 2008, and I understand all about subprime and credit and blah blah blah. But the thing that drove it over the top was $150 a barrel oil, $4 and some odd cent a gallon gas. All of a sudden you have a choice you have to make. Do I put gas in the car to go to work? Do I pay the CPS bill? Do I pay that? Do I go out to eat? Guy like me, $5 gallon gas, I can tell you we'll probably see we'll take a 10% hiccup. Easy.
Does it also mean that you have to charge more for things?
Well, I get charged.
And your menu is going to have to change.
Those transportation costs, and not only is gas $5, but diesel, if you look at the price of diesel, it's trending up even at a faster pace than gasoline, which affects the transportation costs. When oil is at $100 a barrel, every invoice that comes in my back door has a $7 to $10 fuel charge on it. Now, aside from having Velcro the prices to the menu, I'm stuck absorbing that. And I have such a commitment to quality, I'm not going to say, okay, well, I'm going to buy the skinnier bacon or the cheaper this or the less expensive that. I'm like, my deal is we're all about the quality, so I have to eat those costs. And then when I do reprint the menu, yes, I have to raise prices because I know that, but when I reprint the menu, it takes the first 90 to 120 days just to recoup the cost of the printing before I even recoup the cost of the costs.
Just remember, as the president said this week, those higher gasoline prices are a sign of the strengthening economy.
Oh, really? Okay, well,
Yes.
I'll try to remember that.
So, I
bet.
bet you should feel good when you're
I'm going to
back.
write that down.
Write that down.
I might even Velcro it to my forehead.
We're back with more Gang of Four. Elaine and Carlos and Robert and you at 599-5555. It's 10:55 on KTSA. Karen Klaus, say good morning to our gang.
Guten Morgen, Karen.
Karen, gang. I'd like to have everybody meet. There's a guy who lives and works in Washington, D.C. named Danny White. He thought it'd be really funny, Karen, if he got some vanity plates that read no tags. Get it?
Yeah, I get it.
Just having some fun. Just a little bit of fun. He is now up to, and it's not over yet, $20,000 in tickets
What is it
for not having any tags. Yeah.
for? No, ow.
Well, no tags. They write it down. The computer processes it as doesn't have driving without license plates. He keeps getting tickets at his home, and the fact is he gets other people's tickets who really don't have license plates. So it's sort of like if your name was Santa Claus, you'd get all the mail that people send to Santa Claus. He's getting all of the tickets that other people who are driving without license plates should be getting. So, maybe vanity plates are just... Does anybody in the room have vanity plates? Okay, vanity plates are a bad idea, I think. That's just... Enough of that. All right, speaking of getting into trouble, let's get into some more with our gang right now. Robert Fleming, Carlos Abelar, Elaine Wolff. More Gang of Four on 550 KTSA. We were talking earlier this morning about the Guadalupe County judge, Michael Wiggins. I always think of that skit on the Carol Burnett show, Mrs. Wiggins.
Yeah.
Michael Wiggins is the guy who was busted in a College Station hotel room. He was not in room 420, by the way, we checked. With marijuana, admits it. Now people are saying, including the editorial page of the Express News, he should not be holding this high esteemed office while he has the marijuana charge hanging over him. Does the judge have to step down, or should the wheels of justice turn first? Robert, what would you say?
Innocent until proven guilty.
All right, even though his duties include magistrating some cases and holding hearings, he should still be able to do his job until that time. What would you say, Carlos?
I think maybe if you just didn't, wasn't part of any cases where the issue is like marijuana.
He should recuse himself from pot cases.
Yeah, and then otherwise just let it play out and see what happens.
It is, after all, an elected position, Elaine, so shouldn't the voters ultimately be the judge here?
Well, no, so here's the problem.
Of the
I think
judge.
that voters, and I was hearing some of this discussion earlier, I think it was a caller, and, voters might elect him, might re-elect him, and I think that would basically reflect ambivalence about our drug laws right now and about the drug war, specifically about marijuana, and that's fine, but the problem is what he did is, in fact, illegal. I don't think has he actually denied it and said it absolutely wasn't happening?
Oh, no.
Right, so...
Police say he was cooperative.
Yeah, I don't think he can be in this position of being like, yeah, so I'm engaging in some illegal behavior.
And mellow.
But I'm gonna pass judgment on
There's
other
no
folks.
resisting.
Yeah, and so to me that's really the issue now. I'm not saying that I also have a problem with our anti-drug laws, and I have a problem with the drug war.
But you got to hold people to the law as it is right now.
That is what he said he would do, is that he would enforce the law by taking this position, by accepting this position. I don't think you can do that.
But can you break a law, pay the fine or fee or penalty for it, and still hold office?
Well, all right, so let's take speeding as an example, right? I think you can get a speeding ticket. That's a little bit different. This he did when he went. I assume he must have rented the hotel room or met somebody in the hotel room. I mean, there's a whole lot of intent there to do something that he absolutely knows is illegal. And he's an elected.
People get in their car every day and decide, oh, geez, I'm late to work. I got to stand on it.
Yeah, I don't think that has the same moral. That doesn't have the same. And speeding isn't tied to. And I think here's the other problem, right? And marijuana, and we all know. I think many people who smoke. And marijuana is, unless you're growing it in your own backyard or buying it from a guy who grows it in his own backyard, it could very well be tied to what is in fact a very bloody and terrible conflict. And I think you have to think about the moral dimension of that if you're choosing to engage.
No, Elaine's getting very Santoramish on us all of a sudden.
No,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I don't think most stoners go that far into the Blood Diamond train of thought
Yeah,
on
but
that.
so there's an interesting analogy for it.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of drugs, let's talk about Whitney Houston.
Crack is whack, Jack.
Los Angeles radio station KFI has suspended its most popular talk show hosts, John and Ken. They're heard all over California on a number of radio stations, for making some remarks this week about the death of Whitney Houston. She's been cracked out for 20 years, they said. She's babbling like an idiot, running around. She's a mess. She's been doing this 20 years. How much of a pain in the ass do you think she was? Everybody who knows her had to deal with her. It's like, oh, here comes the crack hoe again. And for that, they've taken them off the air for 2 weeks. Should they have suspended these guys for calling her a crack hoe?
I was fine with everything up to the crack hoe thing because
We don't know that she was a hoe.
I don't know. I just don't know, other than for shock value or humor value, how beneficial that particular comment. Their points up to that were all valid. But once they cross that line, then it's like, okay, now not so much.
Is it interesting to you as it is to me that people take a lot of comfort when somebody is really messed up on drugs? I don't know why this is. It would be interesting to do a study. People take a lot of comfort in sort of mocking that, or it's not just that they're a crack addict, but they're a crack hoe. So, I don't know, Elaine, does that sort of make us feel like we're putting some distance between ourselves and something that scares us? Or
Oh yeah, and something that is really truly tragic. It's tragic, and
so
the reasons
instead
why
of crying
that
about
happens,
it, we're laughing about it.
right, or saying, what are the underlying issues here? I mean, and a lot of it has to do, I think, with the monster of celebrityhood, right? I mean, people get under that lens and they can't handle it, and so that's part of it. But then also just the drug epidemic. There are people, addiction is a serious issue. That part of it is a really serious and difficult issue to deal with. And it's, I mean, to me, it's like, everything they said, especially as crassly as they said it, addicts are in fact an incredible burden for the people that they are close to, right? I mean, that is a huge thing to deal with. But the culture of celebrity and how it's led us to talk about people, like you don't know them personally, so you can just say horrible, trashy things about them and it's fine. But they're a private station, right? So if they feel like they've got to suspend them for a couple of weeks to make nice with some of their listeners.
Why is it so appealing to us, Carlos, to kind of revel in the whole crack hoe thing? I mean, what's going on there?
Well, I think it's probably because there's probably people would see it as having a little bit of some racial overtones. So I think that's probably why they would get suspended. I guess it also plays along to that guy that got suspended with the basketball team.
Don Imus.
Don Imus. There's some of that in there, so maybe that's why. I mean, I would say that it's up to the station to decide what they wanted to do when they suspended him. So that's my.
We do seem to have a real. I mean, the minute I brought up Whitney Houston, you had the crack is whack quote, Robert. We seem to have a real interesting, I don't know, stew of opinions or emotions about this woman. She was obviously a big entertainer. She was probably the biggest music star, or one of the biggest music stars of her time. At the peak of her success, she was in the top tier. She was setting records that have since been eclipsed, admittedly, by other performers.
Less talented.
As she has come home to New Jersey for the service tomorrow, the governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, has ordered the flags of the state lowered to half staff, touching off another controversy. In fact, even state workers are saying on websites, he may order it, but we're not doing it. And even some military families have said, look, we're offended by this equating of Whitney Houston's celebritydom with the actual sacrifices for their country made by soldiers. Christie's response is, hey, I've ordered it lowered for those soldiers. I've ordered it lowered for police officers. I didn't exclude them. I'm just including her. Who's right here, Elaine?
I think he's absolutely right. I mean, he's made. I do find it problematic, by the way, if there's workers who are like, well, we're just going to ignore the governor's request or command in this instance. But I think what he's doing makes sense. I mean, she's from there. She was a tremendous star. It is tragic what happened to her. But many people who achieve great things also have great faults and in some way fall from grace, and that doesn't mean that we write them off.
But why do we lower the flag for Whitney Houston?
I guess what's the problem with that? Like your sense is maybe
Well,
it cheapens what other people do. I mean, she did.
Shouldn't that be an extremely rare and specific honor, and aren't we kind of broadening it out?
Is he just? I mean, has he? If
He
doesn't-
lowered it for Clarence Clemens too, and I mean, again,
Yeah.
people are. I don't remember there being any outrage about that, but now people are bringing it up and
Well,
saying,
Clarence Clemens didn't die of a
you know,
drug overdose.
why?
Yeah. If we lower it for Kim Kardashian, you know, when she goes on to her greater reward, and
You'd have a
is
problem
she
with
from
that.
California, right? Yeah, that might be
So
cheapening.
that would be
might be cheapening
That's
the
your
notion
limit
a little bit.
Okay. But anybody
You know,
other
the
than the
floor is in Elaine's
Kardashians,
world. for
Carlos, what
celebrating
about it?
recognition.
What about it?
Well,
You're a younger guy. First of all, does the lowering of the flag thing even does it have a lot of meaning for you?
I guess technically not really. I mean, I guess when people say like, "Oh, they're lowering the flag," to me, I'm just worried about work. So I don't know. I mean, I guess it might be an issue to some people, or it's just something to bring up in the news cycle, I guess. But people can choose not to do it, and they just don't do it. Like some of the state workers said they're not going to do it, so they just don't do it. I mean, it's like, it's not a. No one's going to go to jail for not lowering the flag, I would assume, or not really get in trouble for it, I guess.
All right, Robert, is there a problem with doing this? Is there a problem with the governor ordering the flags to come down?
I think when they do it for private citizens whose sole impact is that they entertained people, it kind of makes it less special. I know there's been times when I was in Austin and the flag was at half staff, and I'm like, who the hell are they lowering the flag for? You know, nobody.
You made a
of note
distinction, though. You
died.
said Clarence Clemens didn't die of a drug overdose.
Correct.
Should it matter how the celebrity
No,
died?
no, I really,
or
I
is
think that
celebrity
I
just
think,
not worthy of this?
no, exactly. I think they're not worthy of it. Okay, I mean Jimmy Stewart, who was also from Jersey, died a couple years ago. The guy was a colonel in the Air Force during World War II. Blah blah blah. Didn't lower the flag for him. How? Because we have this attachment to these celebrities who really, yes, she was a wonderful singer. I don't know that she was a role model as a mom or as an American citizen, but aside from entertaining us, really what was her contribution to the betterment of society?
Right. Well, I think that you were downplaying entertainers and the role that they play in our lives. I do think the notion of
You're darn
celebrityhood-
right I am.
That celebrityhood has been cheapened to the point where it's like you can be famous just for being famous. But she truly had a talent and did amazing things with the talent at her peak. And I don't think, and we spend a ton of money on entertainment because it does something important for us. I mean, there has not been a culture that does not have some form of art form that has to do with entertaining and telling ourselves stories or reflecting ourselves back to.
I understand that, but
And so
that
I don't-
doesn't
so it's
make
not-
them. That doesn't make them or their viewpoint or their life any more valuable than the five of us sitting in this room right now. What makes Whitney Houston more valuable of having the flag lowered on her behalf because she sang the national anthem great at the Super Bowl, which I've heard 100,000 people talk about since she died? What makes her more worthy of having the flag lowered than you?
We decide. Well, for one thing, I haven't sold all those albums. Millions
Big
of people
deal.
don't know who I am.
Big
I haven't
deal.
warmed
You're-
to
you've
them.
been-
I think
you've been a
that
journalist for
music
how long
obviously
now?
meant a lot to
How
people.
long have you been a journalist for?
I don't know, maybe 20 years.
Okay, and you think that you've made no contribution at all to the discussion in those markets where you've contributed?
But to the point where someone should lower the flag. But I mean, I guess people make distinctions all the time about how to honor certain achievements, right? And I do think I personally have a problem with a society that says all achievements are equal. I don't
Exactly,
think that
they're
encourages
not.
people. That encourages people to not strive to be better, right? So I don't have a problem. I think Whitney Houston was an extraordinary pop entertainer, and so if Christy wants to make that decision, I think it's fine.
it's a states' rights issue. And we can talk about that. But it also might be a reflection of that state. So if they accept it, or if that's the governor that they have elected that says that's what they want, then that's what that's what's going to happen. You know.
I have to say, I think he's making a mistake, and I think it's unnecessary. But I will also say, if I was going to argue it the other way and defend lowering it, I would say we lower flags and we have essentially state funerals for hack politicians who have done nothing more than stay in office for 30 or 40 years,
Absolutely.
feeding at the public trough, stealing from people. For some reason, we have no problem with heaping honors and naming things after people who've done nothing but never push back from the public trough. So if you're going to do that, I don't think you can really be outraged about Whitney Houston. She didn't make anybody buy those albums, and we didn't subsidize her career. So, you got to pick and choose your outrage, right?
I suppose so.
I mean, why are we naming schools after corrupt dead congressmen, but we're offended by Whitney Houston? It doesn't make sense.
Nope.
Now, having said that, I would like to see that honor really reserved specifically, I think, for people who have died in the course of service to their country. I think that would be a reasonable, Elaine, we can honor her a lot of other ways, but that flag thing, that flag etiquette issue, I think could be reserved in a very specific way so that, people should always know, like Robert was saying, when they're driving down the street and they see flags at half-staff, we should all always know why that is. And if in fact we don't, then maybe we're doing it too often.
Well, I'm going to go back to what Carlos said a second ago, which is that in a way it is a states' rights issue in that he is making a decision, right? He's making a
Sure.
decision as a politician about what is perhaps meaningful
he has the right to do it.
for his state. I actually was surprised. I thought you were going to say that he was just trying to get the black vote, to line it up for whoever gets the Republican nomination. But I do think that it's his.
Cynic.
It's. I'm not. I think he should do it.
Wait a minute, was Whitney Houston black?
But so I do think that it's up to him to make that call if it's meaningful for his state.
Tempest in a teapot, quite honestly.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, and also the tempest in the teapot, yeah.
All right, well, before we leave the Tempest in the Teapot, what celebrity death, pull on your headphones, please, what celebrity death would be complete without a flag-lowering controversy, and could we have a side order of Nancy Grace, please? I heard she was with John F. Kennedy right before she died.
She could have been. And J. Edgar Hoover was serving them in a French maid's outfit.
Does there have to be more? Could it just be what it appears to be? Does it have to be more than that?
Well, what would be a panel with the Ron Paul guy without throwing out a conspiracy?
Let's hear it.
Oh, yeah, I really do.
Well, I mean, is she worth more to the record label, dead or alive?
Well, you're right. She
They
hasn't had a hit in a while.
Didn't that guy Davis? Clyde Davis still had his party keep going. People were dancing while there was a body upstairs. I don't know.
That was a little weird.
It is very weird. And didn't the daughter, like the day before, also get in trouble for the same thing? Where she was. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. And that's my Ron Paul supporter contribution of conspiracy.
Very well. Ron Paul would have been very proud of you, and Nancy Grace would have been.
Yeah,
as well.
what's a controversy without Nancy Grace getting some meat out of the deal, anyways?
Well, look, the Dancing with the Stars thing didn't work out, so she's back on the trail.
And I have. You might want to put this in online. The next street renaming that the city council undertakes, so that they've left their political legacy, might just be a modification. Should it not just be Whitney Houston Street in San Antonio?
Very nice. Very nice. Good. Give them more ideas, Robert, because they don't have enough already.
Well, they don't want to take on the real stuff, so let's give them more pablum to throw out.
We're coming back with the lightning round on Gang of Four next on 550 KTSA. Here's Karen.
I thought that was the lightning.
Talk of San Antonio, 550 KTSA. Jack Riccardi holding it down to the weekend with our Gang of Four today. Carlos and Robert and Elaine. And we'll get results in the JR poll coming up a little bit later this hour. The question today on the poll, should the Guadalupe County judge caught with pot step down? Yes or no? 599-5555. All right, lightning round on Gang of Four. Story this week in the news about a 14-year-old boy who is about to graduate from UCLA. He has 2 associate's degrees and a bachelor's degree, and is also just, by the way, 4.0 GPA, and has just published his first book. He says he is not a genius, and his parents did not push him. They're not those, crazed tiger parents that you hear about sometimes. He says the secret to his success, 14 years old, is that he only watches 4 hours of TV a week and just works hard. He says he's not naturally a genius, doesn't have an extremely high IQ. What do you think?
So back before TV was invented, then I guess everybody was graduating from college at age 14.
Yeah, what was holding the kids back?
Books.
What was holding those kids back before TV?
Yeah, no. I
Radio.
Lance Armstrong also, by the way, is not special either. He just practices a lot.
Practices a lot.
Is he getting a degree in self-deprecation?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know what his degree is in.
Because that's about what he is.
Oh, math. It's in math.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hey, more power to him. I mean,
But when you're a parent, you hear these stories, you think, oh my God, what am I doing wrong here, Should I be allowing my kid to watch a cartoon? And are the books in her room challenging enough for a 6-year-old? I've only got 8 years to get her out of UCLA.
well, I would really be interested to know, what did his parents have him doing, say, between the ages of 2 and 6? You know, not that I think that, you know, if they had them like immersed in, you know, books on tape, the classics, brought all this there, but it would be interesting to know. You know, and I do believe that, yeah, restricting the TV probably has something to do a little bit with
But couldn't
academic
it also
achievement.
be true that, I mean, not that this is an extreme case, Elaine, but maybe we do expect too little of kids these days.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, of course, that parental expectations and things like that don't make a difference, but I think people always want to boil it down to a simple formula and say, well, if you just do these 3 things, your kid too will be a genius, or you too will
Sure,
achieve these
I
great
agree
things.
with that.
But it's always a combination of individual ability and then the context in which they grow up and operate.
But when you look at things like the McGuffey reader that was in use for so many decades all across this country, the generations of children, you're not familiar with
I'm
the
not
McGuffey
familiar
reader?
with the
Google the McGuffey reader. That's how. Are you familiar with it?
very familiar.
I mean, that's how.
We had 'em in our house.
That's generations of Americans learned how to read and learned their first basic skill. I guess my point is when you look at the materials, the educational materials that children used well, not even 30, let's say 50 years ago, why is it not possible to expect the same level of literacy today? Why not?
Do we not? I mean, to me, there's more educational materials out there available in more formats than I think there ever was, and you can certainly find very challenging educational materials. I know for a lot of parents, it's really an issue of time and ability, right? I mean, if you, and in most cases, both parents, if there are 2 parents, have to work. If you're a single parent, you're working very hard. And so you may not have a whole lot of time to spend with your child doing those things. And so then it becomes, well, what kind of quality school are they going to? So I think a lot of times it's not even a matter of are there parental expectations. It's like, do the parent and child have time together to manifest those expectations?
You know, Elaine, this is twice now you've made this 2 parents have to work. Do they really have to work? If they have to work because they have to have the flat screen TV, they have to have the lifetime gym membership, they have to have this. You know, there's a lot of things people seem to think they have to have that if they maybe didn't have, they would be able to do just
well, what
fine
about, say,
that way.
private education? I mean, you're just bringing up luxury items, right? But there's lots of things that people could decide together that make sense for their household that are not luxury items.
Right.
Right. So where I think both parents would have to work. And I think in a lot of situations, yes, people are making so little that both parents have to work to make ends meet, to buy the $5
But that is
a gallon
not.
of gasoline.
But
to put
I don't
in
think
the
that
car.
that is. I don't think that that's the majority of them. You know, my daughter's a product of public school education. You know, grade school in Minnesota and in Dallas, high school here in San Antonio. You know,
How old was she when she graduated from college?
21, 22
That
years
is
old.
so late. What was she doing when she was 14?
You know, she was in AP Science and Math, and you know, she's an engineer, and you know, but you know, I mean, I think it's about parents setting the expectations, rules, boundaries, limitations, and you know, if they know what the expectations are, and if the parents have an expectation, the child will typically want to perform because they don't want to disappoint mom and dad.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think that is really a key ingredient. So is the parental expectation.
What do you guys think of Jeremy Lin, the New York Knicks rookie? The
Oh.
Linsanity.
I think it's great. What he was like dropped by 4 or 6 teams before he caught on with the Knicks. He's got a sweet shot. His jumper is.
Played college hoops at Harvard.
I know, which has never been known as a round ball powerhouse.
That sports factory.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I'm starting to wonder, though. I mean, I like the story, too, and he seems like a great guy, Carlos. But do you get the feeling now that after Tim Tebow, there's always going to be one of these? This is like a new slot that's been established in the sports world, where there's always got to be this kind of Tebow-like story.
Well, once again, it's probably just something the news.
It's a media
It's a media created, but I'm more interested to see how fast New York eats him up, and because he's tries
Spits
to
him out.
and spits him out.
Yeah.
That's what I'm more interested in.
I think it's kind of like the National Football League. Every team now has the guy with the long hair hanging out from behind his under his helmet. Now we're going to have every team's going to have an overtly Christian player on it.
Well, and it's not even that. I think what people are looking for, they're looking for somebody that's breaking the mold. What they loved about Tebow, among other things, was that even his own team executives didn't want to use him. The fans insisted. And with the Knicks, this guy wouldn't have even been playing if it wasn't for injuries.
What are they, like 8-0 since he's?
Yeah, I think they've won every game that he's started in.
But what's going to happen when they lose? So that's the point that I'm trying to play. Like, wait
yeah,
till
yeah.
New York media and all that.
Yeah,
He
he
starts
has his
throwing
first bad game.
air balls and bricks and starts dating somebody and all this stuff, like somebody famous, and It won't be long before I think New York
I don't
takes a
think
hold
Kim
of Rome.
Kardashian has a current NBA boyfriend.
There was an ad that ran during the Super Bowl in Michigan. You probably have heard about it. Very controversial. It was an ad for Republican Senate candidate Pete Hoekstra, and it featured an Asian American actress bicycling across a rice paddy and speaking in broken English about how the senator from Michigan, Debbie Spend It Now, as she called her, spend much American money. You borrow more and more from us. You make your economy weak. You make ours strong. We take your jobs. A very controversial ad. Pete Hoekstra's been taken to the cleaners over this thing, and
awesome.
it hurt him big time. Well, now I think this is interesting. This is the postscript to the story. I mean, it's just a horrible, horrible stereotype. Now the actress featured in the ad is apologizing. And I thought it was interesting, no one brought this up at the time. How awful of Pete Hoekstra to make this ad stereotyping Chinese Americans. The actress is Chinese American. Her name, by the way, is Lisa Chan, and she has taken to Facebook to say, I am deeply sorry for the pain that my character portrayed. I feel horrible about my participation. I am determined to resolve my actions. He has pulled the ad as a result of it backfiring, but now she has apologized. Should she give the money back? Or should she donate the money she made for the ad? Or
To the Chinese Anti-Defamation League?
I mean, if it's wrong for him to do it, is it also wrong for a Chinese American actress to appear in it?
Well, I gotta think, she obviously must have seen the script before she did it, and she probably had to be, there was a director who said, I want you to do this in like this Chinese immigrant style, you know, love you long time Joe kind of way, you know what I'm talking about? What I really want to know is, who was the brain dead moron that thought this was a good idea in the first place?
Yeah, you know,
I mean,
he's-
seriously.
And he's getting spanked over it, which he well should be. And
Oh, yeah.
if she is truly sorry, and she really wants to impress upon people that she's truly sorry, yeah, she should donate the money to something. But I mean, for her to add this other moral dimension, where really she's done something really morally culpable, I think is wrong. She took a job. She regrets taking the job now because she's embarrassed by it. But that's kind of where it ends.
Where is your
What I
liberal
think is-
idealism, Elaine?
what
She
I-
took a job. You sound like a capitalist.
I am a fan of jobs. I've had many jobs in my life. It's nice when they come with a paycheck.
But I mean,
the-
is it just taking a job when you are performing a script that demeans your own ethnic background?
Do you think that all of the actors and actresses who could only get stereotyped roles in Hollywood for all those decades should come back now and apologize for having taken those roles and give them
No,
money
because
back?
in their era, that was the only kind of work they could get. But
Well, and
that's
I
not
think,
true
and
of
well,
her.
so I'm glad you said that, because I think the analogy I want to make here is this: that we are now entering a period, right, of great American trepidation about China and our relationship, you know, vis-a-vis China as a world power. There's rumblings now, like, are we going to have, what are they doing with their military? I mean, lots of great concern about what's happening with trade imbalances. And so you are going to see that kind of stereotyping and demonizing happening more often. I am looking forward to the Hollywood films that will come out, I think, now, where China replaces Russia. Back in the day, that was what I grew up with, was all the great Russian, villains. So, and so even as the vice president of China, right, is spending the night again in Iowa, kind of thing, you are going to see this other type of thing happening in pop culture. So.
It is
You may
like
be
a-
right about that.
Like Rocky Part 7 versus Lin, a
Versus
fighter.
Jeremy Lin. All right, this story, I got to end with this. A college student writes an essay inspired by the 1984 Van Halen hit Hot for Teacher about his first impressions of his professor being that she's tall, blonde, stacked, smart, and articulate. So far, I'm thinking, he just needs a little red pencil corrective, right? It's not appropriate. You need to, What changes the story is the college student is 56 years old. That does change it, doesn't it, Elaine? Like all of a sudden,
And how?
you don't just want to admonish him, right?
He is really going back to school.
Yeah, he really is.
Right. Yes. And how old was the professor?
She's
know?
like 30-something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awkward. Very. Awkward.
Very awkward, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So possibly right. So maybe he needs to,
So how old can you be, Carlos, before that's not okay anymore?
I'm getting married. I don't know. No
That's the
comment.
first time I've ever. Carlos completely. It's like somebody took his batteries out. I've never seen you do that. Wow. His eyes fluttered, and there was nothing there for a minute.
I was being politically correct. And I was
No,
just-
but I mean, wouldn't it be a different story if we were talking about a 19-year-old sophomore or something?
I don't know. I guess it just depends. I guess.
Some guys never grow up, right?
The whole
Yeah,
thing's
there
got
you
website written all over it. I just don't want to go there. It's ick.
You just don't want to go there. I'm always willing to go there. I guess that's the difference. I'm the guy who goes there. All right. Speaking of going there, we're going to be there at Magnolia Pancake House in minutes for the Riccardi party.
Your table is waiting.
Looking forward to that, Robert, and good luck with the new location. Keep
Thank
us
you,
posted.
sir.
Coming
Absolutely.
in April, we hope.
Coming in April.
All right. Do we know that? Is it just going to be Magnolia Pancake?
Magnolia
House?
Pancake House at the Medical Center.
Very nice. All right. And also coming in April, the wedding of Carlos. So, ladies, if you've enjoyed Carlos on Gang of Four today, it's
He's
a little
off the
too late.
market. Boom.
Off the market.
I am gone, but I'm gonna be happily married for a long time. So
Yes. And Elaine will look for you on PlazaDeArmasTX.com. Say hi to
Please do.
Greg and Gilbert and everybody
I will
over
do
there
it.
for us. Thank you for
Thanks
being
for
here
having me
today.
on.
11:40 on the News and Talk of San Antonio, 550 KTSA.